Welcome to Beyond the Break, a podcast where we dive deep into the stories behind today's entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers, and we uncover what it takes to build something that lasts. Let's get started. Beyond the Break.
All right, John Galloway, you ready for Beyond the Break?
I look forward to it.
All right, well, welcome to the podcast. We're thrilled to have you. John Galloway, who's the head coach of Jacksonville University men's lacrosse program. And you've got quite a background, playing at Syracuse, playing for Team USA as the goalie, winning championships. So before we get into that, what led you on your path to be an elite lacrosse player and now an elite coach? How did this all start?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I grew up in West Tennessee High School, the Camillus area, and that I compare, the best analogy I can give is it's like playing football in Texas at your high school. I mean, Friday nights were the big deal, but it was on a lacrosse field, not a football field. And I had an incredible mentor in Mike Masser, who is the winningest high school coach in U.S. history in lacrosse. He taught me how to be a man early on in that career. And when I grew up in that community, it wasn't about playing for Syracuse or playing collegiately or professionally. You wanted to play on the varsity team at West Tennessee. You wanted to win a state championship. And that experience for me made it so I was a little bit more singularly focused than thinking big picture, thinking recruiting and all these things that happen now. I just wanted to play for Mike Masser. I wanted to play on Coyne Field against Ward Melville, West Islip in the state championship. And to me, that was the pinnacle of our sport. So from youth to middle school to high school, I got to really just chase one particular dream, and you did it all in town. You did it with your classmates, with guys that came back and gave back to the program that gave them so much. The graduates from West Tennessee, they were the coaches at the youth level. So it was this really kind of a built-in process throughout the community that led you to fall in love with the game for one reason, and it was to play in that uniform on that field. A funny story: we used to have gym class in high school on the field, and I told our gym teacher, I won't step on that field until I get to be on the varsity team.
Oh my gosh.
And it meant that much to me. Yeah. And I didn't even make varsity until my junior year. So a lot of kids play younger. For us, that was a badge of honor to make the varsity team as a junior. So very different experience than what most kids experience. And I kind of credit all of what I've been able to experience with the sport. I really bring it back to, Mike Masser, Bob Deegan, Tom Donahue, Kevin Donahue. They were my science teachers in middle school. They were my lacrosse coaches in high school. Wow. That ultimately kind of built my foundation.
So think of that. You started off talking about being a better man. Like if your coach influenced you at that level, you didn't even talk about technique. You didn't talk about saving a goal or clearing a ball, right? I mean, that's an amazing way to think of a coach.
Yeah, that's something that I strive now as a coach for, because I don't remember one thing that Coach Masser taught me on the lacrosse field. I remember how he expected us to act in the classroom. He used to have our grade reports every 2 weeks, and he'd read them aloud if they weren't good. Wow. He would be sitting outside of parties in high school and making sure that the lacrosse players weren't there. I mean, he made sure that we were living above the line of citizenship in the community. And I don't recall much lacrosse being taught. I had great coaches, fantastic coaches. The fundamentals were a huge part of it. But when I think about my experience, not a lot of it has to do with lacrosse.
That's phenomenal. Because I view, I run the youth program here locally, and I view it as we want them to learn life lessons. Our goal is not to teach a kid to make a D1 program. Mm-hmm. It's really to want to participate, to get involved in a team culture and learn and be the best version of yourself that's possible. So that's what I hope sports brings people. Yeah. Unfortunately, I know we've talked in the past, people's goal, unfortunately, is to be on a D1 team, make a program and play. But that's the end all, it's really the road that leads people there and what they learn along the way.
Yeah, now that I have two kids, I think back to sport and why we're in it. My daughter's 2 years old and she's in soccer shots. And as I'm watching her run around, I think is she coachable? Is she listening to direction? Yes. Is she respectful of the people around her? You don't think at all. I don't think she's going to be a soccer player collegiately, but I do see her picking up on cues from the other kids and picking up on cues from the coaches. And now that I get to live it every day, I'm starting to see the value of everything outside of just what's next in your particular sport.
Think of growing up in that town, and I'm from Long Island, so we'd look at the upstate programs, and we thought we were the best. I played against Ward Melville and got slaughtered by them. So our program was not elite, but we were in the middle of the most elite lacrosse in the country, I think, and even to this day in New York. but upstate New York. And how many goalies were on your team?
It's a great question. I can recall the guys I competed with, but there were 5 or 6 guys
On a high school team?
On a high school team, yeah. And I can think of them all. Shane McConnell, Dan McEwen, Nate Darrow. Those are the guys that, like, you spend so much time with, too. So you had this competitive nature about the position in particular, but you also had, guys that still to this day were the reason why they push you. So, again, that's part of the community is that, like Long Island or upstate New York, you don't think about what's next. You're just trying to make the varsity team. You're trying to become the starter. You're trying to, become maybe the second string. That might be an achievement. And those are things that instead of looking, far into the future, you're kind of grounded a little bit more in what you do when you play at places like that.
Yeah, and it can be, to some people, that can be discouraging, right? Because it's so hard. Those names you mentioned, they're better than me. People might think that way, but like, how did you dig in and say, I can get to that level, or did they help you, because it's such a competitive environment?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I was obsessed with it. I was obsessed with the opportunity, the chance that I could maybe have to play on the varsity team. And I think because of that, my work ethic was created in that atmosphere where you went and played in the morning, and then you went in the evening and played in the box league. And I used to just sit in the box league and wait to see if any goalies didn't show up. And if they didn't, I jumped in. And I used to walk back and forth from my house, and I remember carrying my pads home at 9:30 at night. And it's like I loved it. It was like the most pure version of the sport for me. And even when I got to being a sophomore, I didn't make the varsity team. I remember going back to JV that day, and Tom Donahue was one of my best mentors. He said to me, "I thought you were going to be a real jerk, but you came back excited to go to work."
Oh, wow.
And like, and I just remember that moment. I share that with kids all the time. Like, sometimes those setbacks are a chance for you to take another step. And I think I earned his respect that day. And he was an idol of mine. So that meant so much to me.
I think the obsessed word is key there, because like people talk about, if you like a sport, if you love it, and then the obsessed, that's where the next level. And as parents, if you have to tell your kid, go out and hit the rebounder or go to the field and shoot, then they're not obsessed, right? And the goals of the parent are disconnected from what the kid wants. The kid, and this relates to everything, whether in business, you want to continue to learn more. Even now as a coach and running a whole program, you look to other leaders and say, what are you doing? How can I get better at this? And I think that's something that translates really well.
Yeah.
So then you go to Syracuse University, and you're there as a freshman. So you mentioned in high school you didn't start as a freshman or sophomore. I think things went well at Syracuse for you.
Yeah, it was unique because, again, now you go to the most storied college program, in my opinion, in the sport. And, the expectation is to win championships. And as an 18-year-old, it was a little bit overwhelming at first and discouraging because people forget, I say it to prospects all the time, because when they come in to my office, they want to play right away. They want immediate, instant gratification. And if I ask them, hey, tell me about your experience as a freshman in high school. And most of them say, I was on the JV team. I got to learn a lot, but very few guys say, well, yeah, as a freshman, I was the star.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same thing when you go to college, except for all the players are better.
Yes.
And I have to remind people just perspective of where you are in the totem pole in that transition. But so for me, it was about learning. It was about a lot of lonely nights thinking about where I was going to fall. And ultimately, as I kind of got over that hump and just focused on my work, I got a chance in the spring, and obviously things went well for our team, and we had a special team. That's kind of what made that journey a little bit more particularly special for me.
Now, you're very humble, but you were a starter as a freshman.
Yes.
And the 08 team did better than well, right? You guys, tell us what you did.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a team that had just come off one of the worst seasons in program history at Syracuse. Wow. So I think there was a lot of emphasis on how do we get this program back to the mountaintop. And a little bit rocky at first, but we ended up getting hot as it went and made it to the national championship game and had a fortune to play Johns Hopkins in front of 50,000 people in Gillette Stadium. And people always ask, what was that experience like? And I don't remember any of the noise on the outside.
Yeah.
Like, we were so focused on bringing that trophy back to upstate New York that I don't remember. I remember it being loud, but I don't think I ever even took a step back and looked around. And I actually never watched that game until last summer.
Really?
Ironically, I never watched. I wanted a moment I cherished.
Yeah.
And I watched, and I couldn't believe how many people were there. The emotions of that day. It was just a really special weekend.
Man, so you're a freshman, you're a starter, and a national champion.
Yeah.
And then rinse and repeat, right? The next year?
Yeah, that was a bit more surprising. I think, obviously we were motivated, but didn't have that same chip. But I just think we had really good leaders and probably one of the best games to ever be played against Cornell that year in 2009. And we started off the college career in a really good position. And those are certainly, it's just very hard to win.
Yes.
I see it now as a coach even more as like, everything's kind of got to fall in place. And for those 2 years, it did.
Yeah, congratulations. That is phenomenal. I have 2 national championships at such a young age against and I think the Dome back then was buzzing. I mean, the crowds you had for regular season games were amazing, you know?
Yeah, it was. It was such a cool place to play. And it's just one of those college venues you want to have a chance to experience. And we just got to do it on home games.
That's neat. So then you go through your college career, and then you were on Team USA a little later on. So what happened once you graduated? Where did you think you want to go next?
Well, I thought my passion was going to take me to New York. I was in the Newhouse School of Communications, so I was going to do broadcast journalism, and I was going to go to New York, and just wasn't. I actually was working at camp in Florida, ironically, and met John Galloway. We were working at camp together and having lunch together, and he said, "Hey, I have this volunteer position. Would you be interested?" And I didn't know, but I knew that if I left Lacrosse, I probably wouldn't come back. Mm-hmm. So I decided to take the chance. I moved to Durham for a year, and it was the best decision I ever made. And I was playing professionally for the Rochester Rattlers at the time, so still getting that lacrosse bug, but then being able to do it competitively. It was the closest to kind of serve my competitive juices on the sidelines coaching, and fell in love with it. And that was kind of like, I always equate it was like my graduate school for coaching was experiencing that time with John Galloway, and the mentor he was to me. He's still, I consider my number one mentor of everything we do in this profession.
I mean, you've named 6 or 8 mentors right now, right up to this, and you've been blessed to have people impact your life. And I think you look at that and help others now as well. So then you go through, but you're still part of Team USA, right? So you had a great accomplishment there.
Yeah. I unfortunately was an alternate in 2014, which was, again, probably one of those monumental moments in my journey of learning how you're humbled, first of all, as a person who's played a lot of lacrosse and played at a high level. I was humbled to serve in that role. It was challenging. I had to go to the games and just watch.
Oh my. But not even dressed.
You couldn't dress.
Okay.
No, once the game started, that was the team, but you were considered an alternate. And I remember that experience. I know that experience is going to serve me well as a parent, because I remember thinking how difficult it was to swallow that, but how much it meant to my teammates that I did, how I handled myself, my body language, and that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, because in 2018, I had the chance to make that team again, was fortunate enough, and the greatest honor that I'll ever have as an athlete was being chosen captain of that team by my peers. That to me was better than the championships. It was a lifetime's worth of athletic service for that opportunity, and something that I'll cherish forever.
That's great. I mean, think of it. You had the challenge in 14, probably your first time being benched or not even dressing. Yeah. And then you get a few years ahead, and then you do even better. So congratulations. That's spectacular. And then did you start coaching then at JU?
Yeah, so I started coaching at JU in the fall of 2016. So there was a little bit of overlap there, which was probably
crazy. To still be playing and be running a whole program at D1.
Yeah, right. We'll see how I did. I guess the record kind of indicates that. But no, it was definitely you're young, you think you can take on the world. Nothing's over. Nothing's too much. And now in hindsight, I look back and say, man, what was I was shortchanging somebody. Yeah. And so when I decided to retire in 2021 from the professional rank, I saw a shift in just my behaviors, my attention, my ability to dedicate my whole self to what we're building here at JU.
Yeah, it is amazing how you've brought that program up now. You've beaten Duke, you've beaten some of the big names, right? And in the Division I world. But a lot has changed. I'd love to dig in now on what's happened the last 6 years. You've been thrown into you and all coaches for all sports have been thrown at COVID, and then now the NCAA NIL situation and recruiting. Everything is so different than even 6-8 years ago, right? And you're how much are you talking about X and O's versus all this other information you got to deal with?
Yeah, COVID was obviously the start, and again, that was a challenge for everybody globally. And then the transfer portal, and that shift. And the transfer portal always existed, but there's the discussion of movement. And that was always something that even now, I talk about all the time, like I want our players to wear this shirt at their company on casual Fridays and take great pride in it. Well, how many people can say that? Because how many people stay for all 4 years?
They might have 3 shirts.
Correct. Yeah, they might be able to rotate. And then obviously now the shift that's happening across the sport with NIL and revenue sharing, it's changed the relationship that you have with the guys.
Yeah.
But what I have found is it's put a greater emphasis on it, because if you don't have a deeply tied relationship, then those things can start to sneak into the cracks. So what we're learning right now is you have to invest yourself into these kids and make sure that they understand, because all these things happen because players felt like they weren't getting what they deserve.
Sure.
And to me, lacrosse is a non-revenue sport. We may not be able to provide millions of dollars, but we can provide networking opportunities, job placement, internship opportunities, and then our whole self. You know, and I think when I tell our staff, like, you have to, when you're here, you have to be 100% invested. We may have families, we may have things going on at home, but these guys came here for us, and we have to invest wholly into them.
Yeah, you think of like your college team, right? You probably, no one ever left. It was the 4 of you since the day you walked in as a freshman to the day you walked out, and that there's a beauty of that team mentality.
Yeah.
That now I think you've been fortunate and you've worked really hard, I believe, to make that fortune, but you've had good consistency of your teams, but that's going to be a challenge going forward. And you might take advantage of that as well, right?
Yeah.
Bring in a 5th year or a sophomore from another school.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've been fortunate in my 9 years here. We've lost one starter, one guy that started for us into the transfer portal. I think a lot of it has to do with this area, the culture here. About 70% of our graduates stay in Jacksonville for their first job. To me, this place allows you to sell something bigger than just the 4-year experience.
Sure.
But to your point, we can also use it in a way to complement our roster, supplement. I always use the analogy, we all watch football, we all watch the NFL, just like the Jaguars. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. There's no way that the Buffalo Bills are going to get over that hump without making a signing like a Von Miller.
Yeah.
So you identify your roster, you build this foundation, and then if there is a young man who's looking for something different, or we've had great success locally of being able to bring guys back home that maybe just wanted to have that experience here in Florida, but they wanted to see what was out there first.
Sure.
So we are that second chance sometimes, but we're also a program that I think is built, our pillars are built on people who fall in love with this place early and see what we see in terms of what this could be.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a new challenge for you, right? And then now a lot has changed just in the last week or two, as far as the way money works. So what are the resources available to you and coaches to even learn, how do I figure out what the NCAA rules are? Because it's different than it was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think, I always talk with families, and as I try to educate them, I remind them, hey, the rules are probably going to change again in 6 months. Yeah. So what I'm saying to you now is going to evolve. And yesterday was maybe the most historic change in the college landscape in my time. And, with revenue sharing and the ability to essentially pay to play. And that is going to shift the dynamic of college athletics, not only football and basketball, but what's the trickle-down effect to non-revenue sports and Olympics sports, eventually the Olympics. That's a big discussion. How is this going to affect the USA teams who are usually, colleges are the breeding ground for those athletes. So for me, it's kind of trying to take a step back and look at it from a macro level, from my athletic director, the university, but also, okay, how is this going to impact this program?
Yeah.
And now it's a little bit deeper into the weeds of what can we do to showcase our support? Because lacrosse is becoming a more important sport on campus. But how can we also play a role within the ecology of the entire athletics department? Because we are a non-revenue sport, so I have to be able to justify what we're doing. So it's a shifting dynamic. It's funny, as I was driving here, I got a notification that there's a new transfer portal window that opens up in 6 days.
Oh my gosh.
And it's brand new. Nobody knew about it, and it's opening up on July 7th. So that's going to shift the roster that I thought we were going to have. That's going to shift it in a week from now. So I've learned that if you complain about it, you will either remove yourself or you will be removed from college athletics. And now I see this as, okay, this maybe is an opportunity. How do we show love to our team and make sure that they're happy, but also go find that that missing piece that is looking for a home. So you just have to be adaptable.
Yeah.
It's just adapt and overcome, and we're going to be doing that daily at this point.
What a challenge. I know, I'm a big Clemson fan, and I love Dabo Sweeney is battling this, in the football version. Yeah. They have obviously more dollars to throw around in the football world. I think back, I always viewed the worst question, maybe, and you can let me know if this is true, the worst question you used to get from a recruit, a high school player would be, can I start? Will I be starting? Mm-hmm. Now it's how much money? Yeah. I mean, is with lacrosse being low to no revenue, are the dollars driving the kids, or is it still just the fluidity of being able to hop around?
I think it's both. At certain levels, it is. At certain levels, it is a component of what you're doing is, hey, what is my value to you? And it's a dollar sign versus a scholarship. Now, I don't think that's going to be consistent across our sport, but it's going to shift the top 5%.
Yeah.
The rest of it is going to be still relationship-based, academic-based. What are you going to be able to provide for me after college? And I think that's what's unique about our sport and why I take so much pride in my job is the 4 years you're going to have with us is fantastic. It's 132 days of lacrosse a year. But what I can provide, and I can tell a mom and dad that sit in my office is, we're going to make sure that they're set up professionally. They're going to understand the culture of a workplace. They're going to be exposed to those experiences during their 4 years here. So when they graduate, we're going to give you back a man that's prepared for life in and after college. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's one of our core values, because it is the actual impact that I can have. A lot of people talk about the degree, the piece of paper. What I want to provide is the holistic experience. So when they leave here, a 6 a.m. lift is comparable to showing up at the office on time.
Yeah.
Or the ability to handle criticism from your employer is similar to the experiences we have in front of 15,000 people playing against Syracuse in the Carrier Dome. Those are the moments that I hope are translatable to our guys after college.
Oh, yeah. It's you got to meet a few of the people in my office today, and each one of them has played Division I sports, and there's a common trait, work ethic, dedication, and overcoming adversity. And I think that's why, historically Wall Street was always receiving lacrosse players as well, because they understand the culture, they understand the work ethic and whatnot. And I think you're bringing that to Jacksonville, which is, as a city, it's growing in its business base as well. And you're doing a great job connecting the employers like myself to the team, and the mentorship programs is something not a lot of coaches do. And I think that's always going to be your one up, I think, where you're going to need different edges, and I think that's going to benefit you.
Yeah.
Plus, kids can live at the beach.
Yeah.
Is that
yeah, that's a huge
There's
challenge.
not many schools that can say that, right?
No, and there may be some places we can live at the beach, but can you also compete at the highest level?
Yeah.
And I remind our guys, this is not a benefit. This is a privilege of what you get. You get to work really hard with us from 9 to 5. But from 5 to 9, you're going to have that work-life balance. And I think our sport does provide that. Our kids want more. For whatever reason, I think lacrosse athletes, like some of our baseball athletes and some of our other sports, they want the experience to be able to live on their own, learn how to cook on their own. I mean, these are life skills that they're learning off campus at the beach as well, not just, obviously, the ability to put your toes in the sand, which is a nice bonus of where we live.
Yeah, and I think one of the risks that was being discussed was that you were automatically going to have to cut rosters. Mm-hmm. So what does it look like now? Where were you in just using you, or just generalities? So I knew there were teams with 65 players.
Yeah.
And what's this 48 number? What's happening now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, every sport's different. So as people learn and listen to these, to do a little research on, okay, what's my sport and how many spots are available?
Yeah.
Now, they did make a pretty landmark decision in that, hey, we don't want to take away opportunity right away. So what they did was they provide a grandfathering opportunity for all athletes that would have been on the team or are coming into the college program as a freshman. So we have a one-time kind of free pass for those athletes to be able to designate them as student athletes who may have been removed but now have the opportunity to stay and compete. And they carry that label with them for the entirety of their career.
Okay.
So if they were going to lose that spot, they can continue on at that institution or potentially in the transfer portal, which again, ironically, that July 7th portal now is just for those designated student athletes.
Oh my gosh.
So if you got that designation, now you can go in the portal and seek a different home, and you won't cost them a roster spot. So again, it's very convoluted. It's very new. I'm just learning about this within the last 24 hours. It just became public, and that's how fluid this is. I don't think when this settlement was decided, that the House settlement, everybody thought about, okay, if this, then that.
Sure.
And how is this going to impact high school kids? And it's going to be significant for a high school, whatever sport you play, whether you're a football player who wants to go to Clemson, and to your point, Dabo's been very matter of fact about his opposition to this because he was a walk-on.
Yeah, think of that.
He was a guy that...
And Hunter Renfrow was playing in the NFL.
Yeah, Kirby Smart. I mean, these are guys that are would have lost that opportunity to play had this rule been just kind of imposed right away. So it's fluid. I think they did a nice job of kind of creating a little bit of a flexibility early on, but moving forward, it will mean less spots.
Yeah.
And that
What's
means,
a roster going to be eventually?
I think for lacrosse, 48 is kind of the starting point.
Okay.
Now, they could reevaluate that each year, but football is 105, and every sport's a little bit different, but it is smaller, which means there's less opportunity for kids out there.
So one of the misinterpretations that I'm already seeing is people think, but you can also now have 48 scholarships.
Yeah.
Hooray, right? So that means you can.
Yes.
And right now we're moving from the world of 12-ish maximum to 48 maximum.
Yeah.
What's the chatter amongst, there's obviously some programs that have a lot more money than others, but let's even talk about the biggest 20 budgets.
Yeah.
Where do you think they'll be as far as scholarships? Guessing.
Yeah, it's unique, and I talk to these guys often. But the Big Ten is a great example. That's where in lacrosse, that's where the biggest money is. But the challenge for them is they have to find money to go pay this $20 million budget that they now have for athletes. That it's going to be used mostly for football and basketball. So what I have heard more so than anything is those programs losing some of their budget, some of their opportunity because they have to now fill this $20 million void that was never there prior to this year. So, again, to your point, that's the greatest misnomer is, well, we're going to get more scholarships.
Yeah.
I most likely you'll see the Olympic sports maybe decrease some of those opportunities. Now, scholarships, I think, will stay steady where they are, but there's different ways.
You don't think someone will have 48 lacrosse scholarships?
No, I don't foresee that happening. And now the good news is you can fundraise for those. There'll be more funded scholarships, but I don't see that becoming increased opportunity from scholarships.
And then the math reality for parents is, back of the envelope, there's now 700 less D1 players.
Yeah.
If it ends up with you are losing, let's say, 20 roster spots and multiply that by all the different programs, there's 700 or over 1,000 less players 3 years from now.
Yeah. I think conservatively you can say 10 spots program for 70 programs is 700 athletes, and that would be conservative. And the math, is unfortunately pretty accurate. So I think that's the biggest concern is where do those young men fall or young ladies? And I think Division II and Division III teams are going to be incredibly beneficial of this.
Yeah.
I also think kind of a glass half full, kids will be more intentional on their process. What is a good fit? What's a good fit academically? Where do I see myself for 4 years versus maybe sometimes in the past, hey, I just want to play Division I. And I think that can also be a really misleading thought.
Yeah. I'm thinking it'll also help the club world, because club lacrosse, even at, like, you're launching a club program, right?
Yeah.
So, or JU is.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So we might see a lot of growth in that.
Absolutely. It's a forward-thinking, and I think the MCLA, who kind of oversees the best club division, they've been really thoughtful about this because they know their teams are going to now improve. They're going to have more rosters. And, I think our university did a really proactive job of saying, hey, kids still want to play. Mm-hmm. Just because this rule is being imposed doesn't mean kids don't want to play. So can we fill that void with another opportunity?
Yeah. And I know this is probably brand new, but could a player, let's say you're back in the future, we're at your 48, and someone gets injured, can you pick someone off of the club team?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, it's kind of evolving. Again, the rules are being laid right now, but as of right now, you can go all the way up till December 1st to announce your 48 for a spring sport. And then in the winter, you can, to your point, kind of like in football, you can pull from, let's call it the practice squad, whether that be club, et cetera, until your first competition. And then you can, once that first competition starts, that is your roster. So if you lose a guy in season or three guys, you're down to 45. But I always, people watch college football more than anything. Think about your quarterback or two quarterbacks being injured. Well, now as a football coach, as Dabo, he's got to think, okay, well, maybe we need to carry 6 quarterbacks instead of 5. So these are some of the things that we're going to see on ESPN that are going to, again, have this really domino effect about this huge decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reality for younger players, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, parents of those people is the opportunity set just shrunk if your goal is D1.
Correct.
So then the reality is maybe enjoy your kid playing the sport.
Yeah, less moaning and yelling on the sidelines and more joy, for being able to play. Because that might be the best version of lacrosse that they get to experience, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
So when you're, I know we're in the middle of the recruiting season, or right now, when you're going up to Maryland, you're going to New York, how do you approach it? Because we all see the coaches sitting there on a very uncomfortable chair.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys do it. It's 100 degrees out. Yeah. You're on this little folding chair. Yeah. And how do you keep track of kids of different classes and different positions, and how are you going to make offers?
Yeah, I'm sure you can see my awful tan lines from being sitting on a sideline. Yeah, we're actually in a dead period right now. We have a 4-day kind of a window where we get to be home, which is really nice. But it's an imperfect science. I remind people all the time that we have not figured it out. And families I heard a family walk by and say, well, that Notre Dame guy left at halftime and my son doesn't play the second half.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the reality. It's a very imperfect way of operating. For me, great example, I'm flying up to Baltimore again on July 7th. I really hope my flight doesn't get delayed, because if I miss the first game, I might miss that one window of opportunity I have. So because we only have 4 full-time members who can be on the road, and there's an increase in growth at the youth and club level, that means there's more kids but less evaluators. So we have to do our best of, okay, who's in our market? What are these organizations or club teams do we have relationships with? It does go back a little bit more to the football, basketball mold where, I keep using Clemson, but Dabo might have, hey, this is Georgia's where we do really well.
Yeah.
Let's put a little bit more.
That's what I was wondering, because now Utah has lacrosse, California has, and Seattle. So are you going to go there, or will you stay to the Northeast or the East?
Yeah, I would say that's our greatest, strength and weakness is, we can recruit nationally because of where we are. We don't have a ton of Florida guys on the roster. We're representative of 26 different states, but that means we have to scour the entire country and Canada.
Sure.
So while it's a positive that we can recruit anybody, it does make, there's not many fields we can walk by and say, well, that group's not for us.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe a Duke and Providence, just using 2 of my experiences, I could probably spend most of my time in Maryland, Philly, Long Island, or New England and get my roster, a majority of it. For us, we are going to be a little bit more willing to kind of reach out to those different areas.
Do you find more value in a showcase where there's just a specific pool of players, or where the kids are on these teams, these state teams or regional teams? What's the best way for you to figure out who's good?
It's a challenging question, because I think the normal answer from every coach is, well, we want them to play with their teams. Start with high school, but clubs, best case scenario. Individual showcases are often a little bit more selfishly motivated. But the challenge is the individual showcases are the time where you see that young man like Drew Kestich on our roster from Wisconsin, who doesn't have a club team or doesn't have a competitive club team that plays at the events that we go to. So while the team events are usually a little bit more enjoyable to watch from just a full game perspective, those individual showcases kind of shed a light into the young man from North Florida who maybe isn't on the best club team, but he gets a chance to play against a kid from the MIAA or Long Island or upstate New York, and man, he sticks out athletically. So it does serve both populations, and you just have to be willing to see both.
One of my sons played at one of those events a few years ago, and I remember on the field one day was this kid who was far superior to everybody, but he was just scoring at a very high rate. And I'd heard on the sidelines between the Saturday and the Sunday, someone told him he better start making assists or no one's going to look at him. And the next day, the kid was an assist machine. So how do you look at that? Because I'm sure people think they got to score if they're an offensive player.
Yeah.
How do you gauge that? Because not everybody's going to score in college,
Yeah, you have to. It's puzzle piece recruiting. You can't have 6 scorers. You hear it all the time when teams are building Team USA for basketball. If you have the 5 best NBA players, that doesn't mean you have the best team. So, are you piecing together off-ball finishers? Are you piecing together initiators, but guys that get in hockey assists? You can look for all those pieces. Now, at the end of the day, you want the best guys. You want the best players that pop at an eye level. But then it's where you can make up the difference is, man, this guy is doing some unique things off the ball that's hard to teach. And for us, that's where I think we can create a little bit of a differentiation is maybe somebody who's not 6'4" or moves like the wind, but he utilizes his skill set to the best of his ability. And it's different in our sport. That's why evaluating is so different is you can be 6'4" and really fast. You can be 5'8". You know, the best player in my opinion, ever play our sport in my time is Mikey Powell.
Yeah.
He was 5'9", but he could move like the wind. Now, again, he stuck out obviously, but he might not have been your prototypical physical build, but he's the best player on the field. So you have to be willing to kind of negotiate with what you think is going to be a Division I athlete versus what you think your team needs over the next 4 years.
And what about multi-sport? You know, how have you seen that translate to your team or the best kids you grade out?
Yeah, we brag as a coaching staff when we grade our final class of how many guys are multi-sport athletes.
Oh, really?
And I think every coach speaks differently about it. I think the overriding opinion is multi-sport athletes is good, but we kind of speak out of both sides of our mouth because then we ask them to be at events in November, you know, and it's a really hard thing to navigate. But at the end of the day, my experience has always been football, basketball, hockey. Those guys are just more holistic in their approach. They know how to communicate. Sometimes the best lacrosse player being the sixth guy off the bench in basketball, well, that's teaching him that humility that we talked about earlier. Yeah. And he is a greater asset on our team because of the cultural value he brings. So football, basketball, hockey, those things do carry weight in our sport. Maybe not just on the field, but also off the field.
Yeah, I love that. You know, when I was growing up, I played football and lacrosse. And originally I looked at lacrosse as just a way to keep in shape for football. Because I thought, and then I came around and ended up loving lacrosse even more. But I just found it a good way, back before we had all these workout programs and ways and personal trainers, that was the way. But do you see a value in a kid doing a lot of one-on-one training? Like, what would you recommend in the off season? What do they do? Because there's plenty of people out there to offer one-on-one training versus something else.
Yeah, I think it depends on the stage of your career. I'm thinking about it now as a parent and watching my kid grow up and then watching these one-on-one sessions and the money that what are you providing? Early on, I think it's beneficial. Individual attention in a calm setting where you can actually learn and grow and listen versus being kind of in the fire. Yeah. As you get older, you develop your individual skill set. I do think there's greater value to being with others, learning how to operate with others, because that's how the sport is played. I think the physical development of the athletes is really important, but not too early. So it is kind of as you go, your training has to change and evolve. But I think the most important thing is that you're around people you trust, whether that be your individual trainer, your club coach, your high school coach. There's a lot of people that are now in our sport kind of invading for the financial reason. Yes. And I think that's where you have to start to be a responsible parent or guardian and say, this isn't in the best interest of what current stage we're in for my kid. Yeah,
I think, one of the things we're seeing is you get these invitations to these elite things, and there is a $400, $600 price tag. Yeah. And that means your child is not invited just for their playing ability. Yeah. So, and that's where, these summers now will play on the weekends, and then you'll hear about kids doing a Tuesday, Wednesday other event in the middle of the hot summer. And I've seen it where the kids are less prepared now. They're exhausted and they're trying to show off to the head coaches, but they're burnt out because they did something Tuesday, Wednesday as well. So
the adjectives of these events, premier, elite, national, it's really misleading. And to your point, I flew home yesterday, a team that we watched. I had one of our assistants go and watch a kid I enjoyed. It was his 7th game in 3 days. And we get nervous about playing a midweek game once. Yeah. You're talking about 7 and 3 days in a row. So what they're doing is not comparable to what we're going to ask them to do when they get here. So you have to take every event with a little bit of grain of salt based on, and that's why this dead period is so valuable. And coaches always value the event right after the dead period. Yeah. Because it's 4 days of rest. We're going to get the best version of that young man or that team on July 7th versus what we just saw on June 30th. Yeah,
no, well, John, you've done great things. I love that, the theme I'm getting from you is you've had great mentors, and now you're who shaped you to be a strong young man, and now you're trying to do the same for your team. So keep up the good work. It's been amazing watching you. I met you when you were first still a player and a coach. You wear pants as a goalie, correct? From what I recall.
Harder
what's
to do
the controversy? Sweatpants? I think you even wore some Adidas pants at one point.
It's funny how those stories kind of grow over time. People always ask me, why do you do it? Is it to make more? I just remember it being really cold in upstate New York as a middle schooler. We used to play on pavement. We used to because it used to be able to be shoveled. And I remember playing really good one day in those sweatpants. I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by people that care more than just how many saves I make. And now in this position I sit in, the wins are great. The wins are awesome. They're a big reason, a motivator for my competitive juices. But why I do this for a career is because I get to watch these guys now get married, now become fathers. That opportunity, that journey for them to come back and say, hey, I appreciate you being hard on me. I appreciate you holding me to that standard. And that's the experience I had. And I just want to be able to give that back as much as I can.
That's the ultimate win. Well, thanks for coming in beyond the break. Appreciate your time and best of luck to you, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Break. If this conversation brought you value, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. We've got more real stories, sharp insights, and powerful turning points coming your way. See you next time.